Good evening, everybody. Hello, and welcome along to your Rangers crossover podcast. It is the Martin and David show, David and Martin show, live, I should say. Well, a few people will be asking, what does that mean, Martin? What is that? Well, you've got the host of the biggest Rangers podcast, and you have got the best looking host of any Rangers podcast. You decide which one's which. It's
Do you
completely
know
up to
what's utterly tragic is that is probably true.
don't make me laugh. My ribs are sore.
What happened?
Playing football. Playing football.
See, and then you've got the cheek to sit here and complain about Rangers injuries.
Yeah, but I'm not getting paid 20 odd grand a week to play football.
I know, but if you've a cracked rib is a cracked rib, whether you're on 20 grand a week or not. But fair enough. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, I'm not the most organised person in the world, and I test Martin's pay, who's much better than me, sends a link in time. So I arrived on here tonight at 6:59 and 43 seconds. And if you think for 1 second that's because I had totally lost track of time, then you are right.
Oh, there's been a few times when I've messaged you and you've went, geez, I was at the time.
Or is it Wednesday? Is it? So I don't know why I had my head today was Thursday. I think because we played last night. But
Yeah, quite possibly. I'm not the best for keeping time either, as the comments always tend to remind me. But David, how are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm a lot better today than I was on Sunday, for example. If we'd done this show then, might have been a different story. But I think last night we got our first real view of what it is supposed to look like. Now, it wasn't perfect, but it was a lot better. And I think that when people have said Rangers fans, we need to give this time. Absolutely, of course you do, any new manager, but you still need some signs. And we didn't have that in the opening 3 competitive matches. Really, the second half against Pana was good, but it wasn't because of the style. It was more, the crowd got up for it and the players responded, and we got those 2 great goals. But I think that last night was the first you looked at the style and said, okay, I get it, this could work. And therefore, it wasn't just about the result. We beat Pana 2-0 at home, great result. But last night was a better night all in. Yes, the extra goal obviously helps. Yes, the fact Victoria Plzen, I think, are 40 places above Pana in the European rankings. But it was more about that was a Rangers team that I could see could go on and actually develop into something. So yeah, feeling a lot brighter about the future today, that's for sure.
Well, apparently, from what I'm hearing and what I've been sent, one of the worst European teams ever to grace a Champions League qualifier, David.
I've talked about this before. That you're forgetting the universal rule of following Rangers, and we're as bad for it as our enemies. By the way, when we lose in Europe, we're pish. When we win in Europe, they're pish.
Mm-hmm.
So we do it to ourselves. We talk ourselves down. Beating Pana at this stage in the season was a great result. 3-0 against Victoria Plzen is a great result. We'd probably need to go a bit better in the next round, depending who we get between Salzburg and Bruges. But again, you would expect to be getting better as the season goes on. But there's a lot of things you can criticise Rangers for in the last few years, and by God, we've done it. But Europe isn't one of them, and I think that if anything, we might be beginning to take really good results as standard, because we've grown used to that, and we feel we should be beating these sides. And this is maybe the old codger, the 90s guy in me, when I remember stronger Rangers teams coming up against weaker European teams and getting their arses handed to them, absolutely. So what I liked about last night was development. Now, players, see, at the end of the day, players are the most important thing. I think you and I talked about this in the summer, didn't we? That you can talk about managers. And in Britain, I think, as a culture, we like to imbue the idea of the manager with an awful lot of agency, as if it's a magic wand, and you get a guy who can come in and he just sorts everything and it's all great. And we don't take it. And you still see it. You see it at Manchester United, who structurally are not set up to win a title. But they kept bringing in one more signing will do it, one more manager will do it. It doesn't work like that. Everything needs to be working correctly for any kind of long-term success. But I don't think it's I don't think you need to have done a coaching course to know that you're going to do better with two flying wingers and a central striker who can hold the ball up and play them in than you're going to do with a front three like we saw at Motherwell on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Two of them don't produce. So last night's front three, I thought, made what we did on at the weekend night and day. Really, it looked amateurish by comparison.
Oh, 100%. And I wanted, because obviously you were obviously covering the game for Heart and Hand, with the press stuff that you do. And it's always interesting to get a perspective from people who were at the game. Because I think you get to see more of the, obviously you get to see more of the game because you can see the whole pitch. But I think you get a better feeling for a player when you're actually there than what you do on the TV. But just before we get into that, I take everything you've said on board there, and yep, we played so much better last night than we did against Panathinaikos. There's still a tiny part of me though, and I haven't really brought this up because it was such a good performance last night. We did play excellent, and it was a fantastic result. And that way you don't want to bring up anything negative at all. You want it to be as positive as it possibly can. There's still a tiny bit in my brain, though, David, that goes, and you kind of mentioned it there. For the last 4 or 5 years, Europe hasn't really been an issue. We've always turned up in Europe. And I suppose it probably might help us a little bit as well that it's Dundee at home at the weekend. But I still want to see those performances being taken into league games. And I'm still not 100% convinced yet, because the team haven't shown us yet, because they've not had much of a chance, that they can do it. It's fine. Europe's fine. Absolutely no problem. I don't fear playing any team in Europe. But we need to start seeing this consistently in the league. And although from what I seen last night, it felt different. Like you say, we had two flying wingers. We got to bring Raskin on to replace Rothwell, and Raskin just took the game as well. And it was as if he'd been playing for the start of the game. Giga was outstanding. Jeffrey had a good game. Aarons was decent at right back. So it felt different. But there's still that wee niggle in the back of your brain to go, but can we do it in the league?
Of course, that's not a nitpick. That's a fact. That's not nitpicking. And you're absolutely right. That can only be removed by performances in the league. And I said this on Patreon and the Heart and Hand Daily Show today, that it's not, I mean, Rangers should be beating Dundee at home anytime, right? That's the reality. It's not enough to go and eke out a 1-0 on Saturday. We need to see another performance. We need to see another good victory. So you're absolutely right. Until we are seeing us regularly doing it in the league, then of course there's questions that, in much the same way as it wasn't all done and dusted on Sunday morning, although the way that some people were talking, you would have thought that it was the end of the world. Nor is it completely fixed this Wednesday morning. It's a case of we are at the start of what will hopefully be a long-term thing under the new owners. So we're at the very start of that. We're at the start of Russell Martin's career. We aren't even at the end of his first window, at the moment. And Rangers are still out there actively looking for players and actively looking to move players on. So I think at this stage, the important thing, by the way, is to keep winning. In an ideal world, you get through. I mean, Pana, we weren't good, but we got through. And that is what mattered, because there was obviously, we could have been playing Shakhtar Donetsk last night. Yeah. It would have been better to meet Motherwell, clearly. However, for me, it is as well as signs of progress. Had we, beaten Motherwell 1-0 and then won last night 1-0, but playing in that same nervy way, I wouldn't be feeling more upbeat today, because none of the concerns would have been allayed there. I don't expect perfection, and in fact, most Rangers fans, when you take us away for the emotion of the match day, so like the Saturday night, when you get us, we do go, right, we get it isn't going to be perfect straight away. We do get that, but give us something to make us think, well, okay, I can see where it's going. Because most fans, not all, most fans want to be optimistic and want to to go, right, I'm going to, but you need to give us evidence that we're not deluding ourselves with it. And I think last night offered some of that. Now, of course, the next immediate challenge is league business. Can you get yourselves back up to speed and start to do this? Because again, we're expecting to be far better domestically than we have been the last few seasons. I could argue, and you would probably agree with me, that that's not that high a bar. So it should be very much achievable. But I think last night we saw a few things. And of course, the big thing, I'm sure we're going to talk about, the viewers will want to hear about as well, is that Russell Martin at the weekend, he made some big comments, and they were big comments. I don't think they were delivered in anger. People were saying, I think he was angry with the team, but I think he was quite measured. If you watch the interviews, when you read the words, it's one thing. When you actually watch him deliver it, it's another. And he couldn't go with the same 11 last night, I felt, for his own sake, for his own credibility, because you cannot tell us that you can see the problems and then do nothing about them. Whereas he did see the problems and he changed it. And I think he's enhanced his standing with the support, but also within that dressing room now. He's showing that he is going to, nobody's going to stand in his way. And I think too often in recent years, when managers have tried that, they've had to do it from a position of weakness when they were maybe getting towards the end of their time there. And players, I think, subconsciously or consciously, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt, say subconsciously, players kind of thought, you're going to get sacked. I'll still be here in a few weeks.
Yeah,
I don't really need to bother. But now they know that there's a new manager who's just in, who has the backing of these owners, and he will get rid of them. It really is that simple. And I think last night he made huge changes and was rewarded for it. Against that, I don't know a single Rangers fan who wouldn't have told you we'd be better off with someone else playing where Kieran Dowell was playing. Of course, it helped that the player who came in does actually look to be a quality addition rather than merely a number. Yeah, great debut. And despite the fact that he's not had time to put up the good toilet roll holder in the bathroom yet, and the furniture
not been to IKEA.
Delivered. Not been to IKEA. He's not been. He'll still need one of the things you sit in the draining board to let the water run through into the sink when you.
Well, he's had that little time he had to sleep in a bus stop last night. That's how little time.
There you go. But yeah, I've never understood that. It's like, oh, he hasn't settled yet. No, he hasn't. But it is a game of football. I get, by the way, actually, I tell you that, but I get it with defenders, where there's a lot of, you need to follow this and go with that and whatnot. But for a winger or a forward, it's right. We need you to get to that byline, and when they've got the ball, we need you to run back and help the guy behind you. Now, there's more to it than that, I know, but on your first night, that should be able to get you through it, and that's what we saw with him. I thought Antman was absolutely terrific last night. I really did. One of the things I like about him, pet hate of mine in modern football, he's put it in a good area, right? There's nobody there. Oh, but somebody should have been there. But they weren't they? So it's not a good area, is it? Whereas every time he looked up, and then I think the third goal was a perfect example of that. A lot of wingers, and this is not just a Scottish thing, by the way, watch any league, EPL, La Liga, guys get to the byline, whip over a cross, regardless of where their teammates are. He looked up and went, right, there he's there, and he put it right in his head. I loved that. No wonder he gets so many assists if that's the way he crosses a ball, rather than just putting it into an area to put it onto somebody. That's a big difference.
Right, you've gave me about 5 or 6 talking points there, right?
That's good, isn't it?
Yes, but I won't remember them all after I've asked the first question. But yeah, I want to talk about Antman. I really do. That was one of the best debuts I've seen in a Rangers shirt for a long, long time. But before that, I want to take you back to what you said there about Russell Martin's comments post Motherwell. I think it was ridiculously taken out of context. He just said what everybody's seen. And like he came out and said, everybody says, look, I said exactly the same thing to the players. So I'm not saying one thing to them and then coming out and saying another thing to you. And do you know one thing that really frustrated me? And it'll probably anger or frustrate you more than it frustrates me because you have to be round about them, right? The press conference leading up to the Plzen game. 15 minutes, the press conference was, David, and there was one question about Plzen. The rest was just all about his post match interview. And whether it was the BBC, don't get me started on them, or it was the Daily Record, or whatever it was, they were all effectively asking the same question, worded differently. I know, and you've said this to me in countless occasions, right? There's a reason why Heart and Hand, Four Lads, etc., have got press access. There's a reason why the Rangers Rabble exists. There's a reason why people watch, and for other teams, there's a reason why people watch them. I just think the reaction to Russell Martin's comments was well over the top.
I mean, it's a story, right? And I get that, but I know what you mean. The reason that fan media exists, and we're not at every press conference, incidentally, there are various reasons for that. We don't have the resources, none of us in fan media, that a company like the BBC or Sky or even a newspaper group will have. And therefore it isn't always possible. And secondly, even if we do go, it doesn't mean you get a question. Because there's maybe 30 people in a room for a press conference that will take between 10 and 15 minutes. Common sense, if everybody got one question, you're talking an hour. So sometimes people say, why didn't you jump in? And you're like, I tried to, but couldn't, especially when they're on a roll. Everybody wants different things from it. When we go to a press conference, we want to talk about football.
Yeah.
And I think that the majority of supporters want to hear about football. When the newspapers are there thinking in headline, they're thinking in clicks. So they don't really want to do long involved pieces about actual football. They want to talk about, they want just something that's a click, a quick hit. Somebody sees something, clicks it, that's them, that's the job done. They don't care about the content afterwards. It's just, did they click it? And for the likes of BBC or Sky, they want to get a line that they can use briefly in Reporting Scotland or Sky Sports News or whatever. So everybody's trying for different things. And the reason I started Heart and Hand, the reason you started the Rabble, is that I think that the mainstream media doesn't really cover what I would call the fan experience. They don't have the conversations that I have with my friends, or that I have with people at the game, and that's what we do. So that's why we exist. So there is that, and they are in love with the drama. They are in love with not so much the sport, the actual game of football, but the soap opera aspect to it. Look at the language that's used in tabloid journalism. Player slams officials, right? Players jets in for crunch talks. It's all hyperbolic. It's all that as I say, that sort of soap opera, big brush stuff. And I think that's the difference. So, for instance, last night in the press conference, I jumped in to ask him about Cyril Dessers and the fact that Dessers, I thought, was able to play a slightly different. I thought that was Cyril Dessers' best, with the exception of away in Turkey, where he was just possessed by the spirit of Mark Haitley that night. But I thought that was his best all-round game last night. And I was wanting to ask Russell Martin, is it because he was able to sit? Because he wasn't caught offside once last night. And the reason I think for that, well, part of that was two speedy wingers that were pushing the defence back, because the defence knew that they couldn't, if they pushed up too far, these boys would be in behind them. And that let Cyril, and I thought his hold-up play was brilliant. So I asked the manager, can you explain to us, what Cyril Dessers, what the difference was tonight and how you find them working with him? And that isn't really a question that is of much interest to the TV companies or to the journalists. They're not as interested in that. So anything at all that can be taken and built into a thing, a drama, they're going to latch on. I think it was bold of him, the team selection last night, because he could have got away quite easily with just dropping Tavernier, Dowell and Danilo, because they're the three I think the fans had went, they need to be out the team. But to drop Raskin, who is a fan's favourite, and there aren't many of those, I think that took balls, because had it gone wrong, that's the one that would have been brought up to him. And clearly we don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but I doubt it was sweetness and light after Saturday. Right, I really don't. I don't think the manager would go, all right, lads, bit disappointing. Try a bit harder on Tuesday. I think arses were kicked, personally.
Mm-hmm.
I think arses were kicked. And there's two ways that can go. The players can ignore you, in which case, as a manager, you are fucked. Or the players can buckle down, and they buckled down, and they showed that. Now, the next test will be, as you say, when we are playing a domestic match and things aren't going their own way. Do they do what they did at Motherwell? Do they do what they did we saw countless times last season, which is hide? Then it's a different thing. But last night he got the performance, but the team was better balanced, and partly that is the defence, because you had a left-footed player on the left. The defence looked far more comfortable, but the midfield balance was better as well, even without Nico, because I think Nico was being played in an alien position that didn't really suit him. Last night, we didn't have anywhere near the amount of chances created against us. And I'm not counting shots from distance. That can happen, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about actual, worked a gap. Motherwell did it a good few times. Pana done it about 20 times. Last night, I felt that the team just looked better balanced and then had a lot more about it going forward. And then there's the other thing, Martin, of players are human too. If there's a player that you don't particularly rate, the chances are his teammates don't, because they're no daft, right? And it does affect them when they go, right, well, I'll pass it to him, and now I'll see if there's a better option. And last night we didn't have that. We had guys, they had options, but in a good way. Do I go left to Gassama? Do I go out there? And I just thought everything looked, a lot better. But there were several outstanding performances last night. For the first time this season, Jack Butland wasn't one of them, because for the first time this season, he didn't need to be. And in part, I thought that was due to the two centre backs, who I thought were terrific last night. I thought were absolutely brilliant. I thought Suter showed real leadership given the armband. I thought the midfield functioned better as a unit, with Lyle Cameron absolutely outstanding. And then I thought the front three, all of them were just absolutely brilliant. And it's a huge difference. But that's the Rangers we want to see. Front foot. Yes, you're knocking the ball about, but you're knocking the ball about looking for a gap. The second you find the gap, boom, you go, and you go with pace. Rangers did that to lightning effect last night. And I saw someone say, well, we had 6 shots and goal. I said, aye, but we've got 3 goals, 1 off the line, and we hit the bar. Mm-hmm. It's not about having 50 chances where 30 of them are shots for 30 yards with the whole defence in front of you. It's quality chances, and that's what we need to create more of. And I think last night you began to see that.
And also, and I think people forget this because of just how easy the victory seemed. Plzen are a good team, right? They're no mugs. They're absolutely no mugs. And I think just because, little old Rangers pumped them 3-0 and it looked very, very easy, well, it must mean that Plzen are rubbish or Plzen didn't turn up. No, we were outstanding last night.
That was what it was. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I go back to what I said at the start. We somehow underplay our thing. Plzen are a better team than Panathinaikos.
Yes.
That is a fact, right? That is reflected. And now, over the course of the season, this may change. But right now, where we are sitting, we can only go on really what we saw last season to get everybody to this stage. And they are ranked, Panathinaikos are ranked 94th. They're ranked 53rd. Okay, now you don't get that sort of ranking overnight, as we know, in Europe. Mm-hmm. They're ranked 2 places higher than Celtic in Europe, Plzen. So it's a bit cheeky of them to say they're a rubbish side. They've achieved more in Europe the last 4 or 5 years than Celtic have. That's a fact.
Most teams in Europe have, to be fair.
Well, but that's why the ranking is where it is. Rangers didn't let them play. Their manager said afterwards, he said, we couldn't handle the speed they knocked the ball about at. We couldn't handle their wingers. We couldn't handle the pace when they moved forward. That is, and that was what it was. The Rangers took them by surprise. And to be fair, if you had scouted the 3 matches beforehand and you then faced that, you probably would be surprised. No, genuinely, I think you would.
No,
if you'd watched that Rangers team who were so flat and inert against Motherwell, then last night would have been quite revelatory to you. But as I was watching it last night, I thought there's two wide men that I can actually get excited about. That, in the second half, by the time they were getting the ball, I was, half out my seat, which is a great feeling. And then I thought, oh, we've got Mikey Moore and Tello Aasgaard to come back into this side rather. That's options again, So I don't think we're done yet. I still expect a left back. I would still expect another centre back, and depending on transfers out, I would expect another centre forward as well. I think we're in a reasonable place, but again, now we need to see. Here's one though. I know for a fact that previous managers have been warned about the lethargy that can affect this team. Russell Martin called it self-preservation mode. I know for a fact that managers, because I've done it and been in the room with them and said, there's something wrong in that dressing room. When the going gets tough, they hide, right? And we said this to Russell Martin as well. We're like, one of the problems you'll face is that too often they and we used to him the phrase that Barry Ferguson used, which is they default to a certain way of playing. He's seen it for himself now. And I think his actions last night and his selections last night said, okay, I gave you all a chance, right? People want me about this, but I gave you all a chance. I wasn't taking it on hearsay, which is fair enough. But now I've seen it for myself, and I'm not accepting it. And laying down that marker so early, I think, is a positive thing, rather than trying to change it for 6 months, thinking I'll be the guy that solves this, whatever this puzzle is. He, I think, has just went, I'm not interested in solving why you do that. If you are going to do it, you can leave.
How is that took 4 managers, 5? I mean, it feels as if we've had more managers in the last 4 or 5 years than we have in our entire history, right? That's
well, we have. That's
yeah,
and unfortunately
it
that'll
feels.
continue.
I mean, I'm fortunate. I grew up in the 90s. I got to see 9 in a row. I got to see winning Rangers teams. I didn't see that many different managers up until obviously the shit hit the fan. But how is it taken? What would that be since even a little bit under Gerrard, even though we won the league? But since Gerrard left, every single manager has fell to the same set of players.
A big part of it is when they arrive. I think if you arrive during the season, you don't have time to, because you need to get results. You've got to get results straight away, don't you, as a new manager coming in? Exactly what Multiple Man is saying here, that you don't have time to work on different things. You can't make any transfers if you arrive, October for at least 3 months. And it's one of the busiest times of the year. So you don't really have that opportunity to change it. And also you can maybe be a bit fooled because there's usually a new manager bounce. Everybody gets a bit of a boost and, there's a bit of excitement. So the first few games under the previous managers have always been pretty decent. And also every manager, and I think you have to have this sort of belief in yourself, but every manager goes, I'll be the guy that fixes it. Same as, when clubs sign players that have had injury records, or a guy who's had a lot of potential but hasn't really realised it, I'll be the one that gets it out of him, Kmart Roof, yeah. And also, who was the
Jordan Rossiter as well.
No, but even though just injuries, even just with ability, that it's never really been shown, and they keep getting moves, and they don't put. Well, I mean, I suppose if you wanted to use an example close to home, somebody like Brandon Barker, who at youth level was an absolute star, at the Man City reserves, an absolute star.
Oliver Burke.
Exactly that. Aye, but there's a player in there. I can get it out. So there is that, but I do think it's time as well. Whereas Russell Martin does have time. He's got the full back, and the situation is different. And I think that he saw that at the weekend, and he saw what people had warned him about. not just us, like he's spoken to Barry, he's spoken to some of the club legends, he's spoken to people that had been around the club the last few years, and I think they have said to him, by the way, see when things get hard, this lot have got a habit of, falling by the wayside.
I should just cut in and say that Club Brugge have took the lead against Salzburg.
It'll be Bruges we play. It'll be Bruges we play.
Yeah, just very, very quickly. Sorry to interrupt as well, David. It's and I'm not putting my neck out there, and I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying it's not been the greatest game of football.
No, they're two evenly matched sides. They're two good sides. I think Bruges are the slightly better one. Whoever we get is a bloody hard game. They're good sides and they know what they're all about, and they've got a set way of playing and they do it. They're not unwinnable, but they are tough. And it should be. It should get tougher every round. That's how that was supposed to work, isn't it? We're in a fairly good position if we get through this. That if we win, brilliant, Champions League. If we don't, and we get all that money, probably won't be the most fun environment once we're in it, right enough. Can't be as bad as a few years ago, though, because the way the draw works now. Yeah. But knowing our luck, we'll get Real Madrid, Liverpool, and have to play them 5 times each or something, all away. But if we get that great, huge financial boost, if we don't get it, we've made all the money that you can make up to that round, which is about 10 million, and we're in the Europa League. I mentioned this yesterday, actually, on Twitter. I was a lot less nervous heading into the ground than I was against Pana. And it was purely because if we'd have gone out to Pana, it was a disaster. An absolute disaster. No other way to put it. A complete and utter disaster. We would have had to play Shakhtar Donetsk for a chance at the and not be guaranteed, but a chance at the Europa League. And if we'd lost that, we'd then had to still do another game to even get into the Conference League, where the money's well under half of what you get in the Europa League. So last night it was okay. We've got the safety net that we didn't have before, and yeah, I think the performance.
Did the starting lineup have something to do with that as well, David? It's a hard one to explain, and it's not just you're saying this after the fact. When I seen it was Jeffrey and Aarons, and when I seen that Antman was starting for the beginning and Gassama or Gassam or however it's properly pronounced, I need to learn how to pronounce it.
Yeah,
and Dessers up front. It almost made me feel slightly calmer because I thought, well, I don't know how the game's going to go, but I genuinely think we've got a better chance now because we're playing players in their proper positions. I totally get your point, though, in terms of if we lost last night or we lose over the tie, which I don't think is going to happen now, we're guaranteed that group stage. The only thing we miss out on is the 5 million that we would have got for winning the game or whatever. But did the starting lineup fill you with a slightly more confidence?
Yeah, because I thought it was a manager who, first of all, I agree. I thought overall it was a better team for the reasons that we've mentioned. The only one I think you could quibble with was Nico, right? That's the only one. But the manager felt we needed something different in there, and he got that from Lyle Cameron. And there'll be other games where it's Nico that comes in, or Tello Aasgaards, we don't know. And Nico will drop a bit further back. Some games, I'm sure he'll play there with Rothwell in a 2. But I thought, first of all, this is an improvement because the back 4 is balanced. I don't like on either flank a full back who's on his wrong side, I just don't like that personally. You get some who are exceptional at it, but most look the way Aaron's looked like, in my opinion, which is uncomfortable. Because nothing's natural then. The way they turn to receive the ball, all of that, what they do when they're in possession, it's all different. So I like the balance. And then, like I say, up front, just looked on paper a different world for what we'd watched, and it turned out to be. Let's be totally honest here and no try to sugarcoat it. Dowell and Danilo in their starts have done nothing to suggest they should be getting starts. Nothing across these matches. Not even moments, in my opinion. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe you can. I haven't seen anything from either of them that suggests they should be in a Rangers team. So, no, I would expect somebody who has played like that for the games that they had played to be dropped.
I don't necessarily. It's a difficult one. I don't necessarily think against Motherwell that Dibble was one of our big issues. But at the same time, in that position, in that right wing position, he doesn't really offer anything.
Well, that's it.
So
He doesn't do anything.
yeah,
And you saw the impact that any team who plays that formation, the 4-3-3, your wingers have got to be doing things. They just have to. You can't carry a winger. Then Danilo, I don't think suits a lone striker role in the way that
not
Dessers
at all.
revelled in it last night. I don't think that it's Danilo's game. And in fact, when I think about Danilo's best performances from Rangers, it's been behind a striker, really, hasn't it? It's been
Yeah,
with another striker up there. So I
or
just don't think
drifting
he's.
out to the left.
Yeah, but even at that, he would have Hamza or he would have had
Mm-hmm.
Dessers in front of him. I just don't think it suits him to play that role. So, and it was obvious last night because when we got the ball, the attacking intent, and that was what pissed me off so much about Motherwell, is that the complete lack of intent. Rangers would get the ball, and as soon as they got anywhere approaching the Motherwell goal, turn around, knock it back. I joked, bitterly joked, but joked nonetheless, dark humour at the weekend. I'm glad it wasn't a penalty shootout on Saturday because our players would have turned around and booted it back to John Souttar. And that's a lack of ambition. That to me that wasn't there at all last night. It was when they got the ball, let me look for one. There he is. Right, there's Cyril, and Cyril's immediately because he knows the two of them are going. Right, if you got it a bit deeper, it's where's Gas, where's Antman, and intent. It, fans know when you're not playing with it. We can see. We know when you're hiding at throw-ins. We know when you're getting the ball and passing it straight away to avoid having to take responsibility. And
We've seen it so
unfortunately,
often.
for the players, the manager noticed it and called them out on it.
She just and it's one of the most simple things you can do in football. And I was sitting with my missus watching the game, and I turned round to her and I went, "Our right back has just punted the ball up the line into space, and we've got a right winger who is nowhere near it, and all of a sudden he's bursting onto the ball." See, just that's when you know how poor quality you've had in your team. Listen, I'm not taking anything away from Czerny. I thought Czerny was excellent last season. Completely different player to Antman and the way he goes about things. He more gets the ball, cuts inside, stuff like that. See, to have an actual winger though, where you if you're under a little bit of pressure, a team knows that you can just launch that ball up the park, and that winger has the pace. That boy has pace just to get running, get on the end of it. I said to my missus, I can't remember the last time we just played simple football and it worked.
Yeah, look, what Rangers are getting, we know with Russell Martin is it's moving the ball, but as he said at the weekend, it's moving the ball quickly. It's not moving the ball, slow between the centre backs. Anyone can do that, and it ain't going to get you anywhere. It's moving it quickly to get people out of position so that your players in these positions have a bit of space, and then once they have that space, they're then talented enough to exploit it in a way that, with all due respect, Dowell isn't. He just doesn't have the ability to do that, to do what Gassama did last night. Dowell has been here for a couple of years. I know he had the loan spell. He has never had a game like that.
Never, not once.
Never, right? People might say, well, he's not a right winger, he's a midfielder. Okay, he's been here a couple of years. He's never had a game like Lyle Cameron had last night because he isn't good enough. And that's no dig on the boy, it's just a fact. He would be better suited. He did well at Birmingham, apparently. So clearly there's a level that he can excel at. But when you've got better players, then things begin to look better. And that's what we're building towards. And I didn't think it was perfect. There were still times, the manager himself said the last 15 minutes we sat back too much and we're playing too much in our own half. And there are times, where people were still not quite on the same wavelength. But these are all fixable issues. That second half on Saturday, as he put it, they're difficult to fix because it's attitude. It's not just tactical. There were obviously tactical things as well, but it's not just that. It's attitude. And if players are not prepared for whatever reason, be it fear, and I think that is what happens to Rangers players when things aren't going well. Too many of them go, oh, I know what the reaction's going to be like, so I'll make sure I don't make a terrible mistake, and therefore I'll be spared the worst of it. you're beaten with that attitude. I mean, you're not going to win anything with that attitude. That's when you need to go, do you know what? Give me the ball. Right? Come on, lads. That's when you do need to get on your teammates and say, come on. It's a tough 5 minutes. We get through it and then we go again. But that is easier to do when you look up and the front three are playing the way they were playing last night and you go, right, if I do my bit, if I just do my bit, then I know that he'll do something or he'll do something or he'll do something and we'll win this game. And that's a big thing. And that's what we haven't really had over the past few years.
How much of that then, David, is down to Russell Martin? Because me and you spoke about it. I nailed my colours to the mast when he was brought into the club. I wasn't enthused. I wasn't excited about Russell Martin coming in. But I also said at the same time that I'm actually praying that I'm proved wrong, because if I'm proved wrong, then we are successful, and that's all we want. But how much is that mindset then down to the manager? If he's saying to the players, like you're saying, see if you try something and it doesn't work, then I'll pat you in the back. But see if you don't try something and you do nothing and you hide, you're out the team. So the players know
now he's proved that.
Yeah, now
I
the
think
players
that,
know that. See if you don't do anything, you're gone.
yeah, and that is it. It's you can only tell them what you want them to do. I can't think of any job, by the way, that if you don't do what your manager instructs you to do, that you keep. Maybe there are some. I can't think of any. Certainly none I worked in. If my manager asked me to do something and I didn't do it, I'd be in trouble. And if I kept not doing it, I wouldn't be
And
employed by
also,
that
if your manager
organisation for
asked you,
long.
if your manager asked you to do something and you weren't capable of doing it, he would just bring somebody else in who was.
Yeah, exactly, and there is an element of that with some of them, but for others, it was, actually the other thing is as well is if the manager wants to build a functioning team, i.e., not be reliant totally on individuals. They're all important, but not a case of, as we've said too far in the last couple of years, it seemed very jumbled and just, or maybe Cherny will do something, or maybe Hamza will do something, or Dessers might grab us a goal. There's been no plan. This is football with a plan. But what that also means is if you're playing, it's kind of like a machine. Every part has to function or has to at least be, doing a job, or it falls apart. What you can't have are people hiding and they're not doing their bit, or people going off on their own and doing things completely different, which is, I think, probably what the Nico thing was about. I think because Nico's a bit like, he reminds me in this sense of Bruno Fernandes, because he's such a, "Oh, right, I'll just do it myself then, if the rest of you only doing it, I'll just go and do it myself." But then that causes other problems because, there's a gap and all the rest, all the stuff we've talked about. So it's a learning curve. It's a big result, I think, for us, obviously. But I think for Russell Martin, it was a huge performance because, as I say, it kind of, it said to the fans, look, this is what we're aspiring to, this but better. But you can see what the plan is. And I think it said to the squad, that kind of stuff might have been acceptable in the past. It's not acceptable now. And the players will either need to get on board with it. And also he was rewarded with the performances that we got last night, because obviously Antman has signed, a £3 million. He's been bought to play, but he came in and he showed straight away. Lyle Cameron was put into the side because he's shown up well. He's worked hard in training. He's taken on board the instruction. Then he went and he took the stuff he's been shown. And he's spoken himself in the past couple of days about how big a step up it is. But he took what they gave him and he went out and did it to the best that he could. I appreciated that. I bet you the manager does. Jefte, who we all know has got deficiencies in his game, but he went out and he did exactly what the manager told him to go out and do to the best of his ability. That is different to somebody going out and going, "Oh, I'll just," we've all played the game.
That pass.
Aye, I'll pass it to him, even though he's marked. I'll pass it to him because then I've got rid of the ball. We've all played football at various levels. We know what it's like when your teammate, you're having a shiter and the team's playing pish and your teammate goes to take a throw and you take that one step so you're slightly behind the defender so he can't throw it to you. right?
Yeah, I've
We
done
know
it
what
loads
that
of
is.
times.
We've all done it, right? And we've all
Done it
shouted
loads.
at and we've all shouted at a teammate that's done it, right? We know that move, and the manager saw that move, and there is a difference between you still try to find space. Now the ball might come to you and you might miscontrol it because you're having a shiter, and it goes out for a throw. But that won't make your manager as angry as just hiding there in the first place to make sure play doesn't get involved in you. Last night we saw skill, but we also saw commitment and effort and intent. And these are key things, these soft skills. These are things that you can't put on a board and you can't put in in a training presentation. You need to display them. A manager can't give you the desire to want to break forward and get goals. You either have that or you don't. And if you don't have it, what Russell Martin has said is, I'm not wasting my time with you. And I think that did give the supporters a boost last night. And in the end, it was one of those great Ibrox nights where the crowd were feeding off the team, who were feeding off the crowd, who were feeding off the team. And, in the second half, when the crowd were singing Penny Arcade, was absolutely wonderful. It was so loud. Another thing, Martin, you weren't at the game, and other people who maybe weren't at the game, the conditions were hellish. The
Yeah.
wind was, it wasn't just that it was really windy, 60, 70 mile per hour gust. It was that it was all different directions and it was random. It wasn't just constantly flying one way and you could adapt to it. And there'd be time a goalie would kick the ball out. There was one Dessers was going for, and he's about to bring it down his chest. And the reason the crowd never got on him is we could all see the ball went, and he was like, the fuck, and it was the win. And for Rangers to play the type of football that we did in those conditions, I thought was really terrific, because again, that takes that bravery that wasn't there on Saturday.
I know, see that thing you're talking about though, where you hide behind the defender. I've done that while shouting at somebody else for doing it, and I'm doing it at exactly the same time. So I know exactly how that feels.
Especially if you were ever a Saturday or Sunday morning league footballer when you've been an adult and you've been pished the night before, and you can't be arsed running, and there's 15 minutes to go, and so you take it up and you wave your arms, knowing full well the guy can see that you're marked, and you wave your arms anyway, and then if he gets on you, you go, "What? I was waving for it," but we've all done it, and that's what I mean. That I think you're better as a footballer to go out there and have a bad game where you were fully committed, because fans recognise that, than having a bad game because you didn't want to get involved.
Mhm.
And that Saturday's filleting of the team was worse than many defeats, and it was because they deserved it, because of that performance in the second half, because that was a team that didn't want to take the responsibility, um, and I think that, from all that we've heard from Russell Martin so far in his time at Rangers, one thing he says he can't handle, and he said this consistently, is, I can handle if my team get beaten by, a better side or a team that has a bit more quality than us on the day. I can't handle when my team get outrun, when my team get outfought, when my team get outworked. And on Saturday, the second half, Rangers, that happened to us, and not a single Rangers fan would tell you that it didn't. Not one. I haven't said I'm a Rangers fan at all who said, "Oh, we were a bit unlucky, it was a late goal." I haven't. Everybody has said, if anything, the opposite, that we were lucky to get the point. And Russell Martin said the same. We got more than we deserved, and it was the fact that they wanted it more than we did, and nobody can or ever should accept that from the football team, but certainly not us.
No, I finished watching that Motherwell game and I went, we were lucky. We were
We were.
absolutely lucky.
It would have been a bit of a travesty if we'd got out there with the points.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be complaining. I
No, I
would be
would have taken
complaining,
it,
but
I still think, by the way, he would have reacted like that.
yeah, so they are.
Yeah, I do, because I think he was really, and it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward now for the guys. Because I'll tell you what, see, if you were one of the guys that were left out last night, if you come back in and there's a performance like that again, I think you can fucking forget it. You can forget it, because I think he's already marked some cards after the weekend, and this is the thing.
It's actually put him in a really strong position. The fact that we performed like that
Yes.
last night, like you're saying, if certain players come back in and that performance completely drops, then Russell Martin's well within his rights to go, I've gave him 2 chances now. And this is
That's it.
exactly the same. So he's put himself in a really, really strong position. And by the way, just on Raskin, what I think makes that decision even more braver, if that's the correct England, is that Raskin's probably our biggest sellable asset. And he doesn't have a long time left on his contract. And the fact that he was more than willing to leave him out for the betterment of what he thinks was the betterment for the team last night, knowing that there's every opportunity, and I'm not saying that Nico would, but there's an opportunity that Nico could go, well, fuck you, then I'm off.
Look, at the end of the day, you need to have the people that are fully committed. And I'm not saying Nico isn't, by the way. I'm not saying that at all. I think Nico's problem sometimes is that he actually cares, a wee bit too much, and he ends up running all over the place and try to do 100 things at once. In that sense, he last season, Nico a lot was like Bruno Fernandes at Man United, where he's the good player in a shite team. And he's like, I'll need to do it because I know this lot canny. So I don't think that's the case with Nico, that he's, it's a lack of commitment. Nico's still got involved first half, absolutely. So I don't think it's a lack of commitment in Nico's. That's one thing I don't think you can ever accuse him of. But what the manager has said is that you will do thing my way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's right, because at the end of the day, who gets sacked if it goes wrong? The manager.
Yeah.
And personally, if I'm doing anything, I'd rather fail doing it the way I think it should be done than try to do it to please other people and end up failing anyway. If I had a go at something, and I've tried things but it hasn't worked out, and so long as I went, you know what, I did what I wanted to do, it just wasn't good enough, or it just didn't work out, I can live with myself for that. If I had not done what I thought was the right thing and the right way to do stuff because I'd been listening to other people, and then it went wrong, I'd have regrets then, because I would always go, what if I'd done it my own way? And I think that needs to be the case for the manager. I think he needs to go, I think he has done, by the way, I'm saying he needs to do as if, I think he has said to that squad, this is how we're playing, this is what I was brought in to do, and this is what we're going to do. And you will either do it or you will not be at this football club. And I think that's absolutely the right attitude. And I think it's something that's been lacking the last few years, partly because of what we discussed earlier, the circumstance and the timing of people coming in. He has got the opportunity for a fresh start. Due to circumstances, he's maybe had to play people like Dowell and Danilo that even he didn't think had much of a long-term thing as a stopgap. But as more players arrive and people get more comfortable, he doesn't. And those guys are going to fall by the wayside.
Yep. And final question, or final point tonight, I should say. There's a lot of people in my comments, I don't know if you're getting asked this, I'd imagine you will be getting asked the same questions, who are a little bit worried about Aasgaard. We have consistently heard that he's just not ready for this game. And then the next game, he's just not ready for it. And then, of course, the next game, David, he's just not ready for it. I'm kind of hoping that this question's answered at the weekend. But should we have any worries about this Aasgaard injury?
I don't think he'll be there at the weekend because he was left at the Euro squad for the 2 games. So I would think the earliest we would see him would be Alloa, a week on the weekend. Just because of that, there's no inside info there. Just because of that, this is something that modern clubs do, and we had David Graham on. He's a regular contributor to Heart and Hand. Davey used to be the Rangers communications director, and he says it's a thing in modern football where the football people, they don't really like giving injury updates with dates because they are quite often just estimates. And like, for example, as he put it, a guy can go down with a leg injury, say a calf injury, right? And the doctor can examine him the next day and say, we think it'll be 4 to 6 weeks, but this guy's a really quick healer and he's back in 2. Or he's a bit of a slower healer and actually it's 8. He said, because then you get accused of lying to the fans. So what they prefer to do, and people have said to me, he's been asked at the press conference and he said, oh, he's not quite ready yet. He's a bit away. And somebody said to me, so he's just allowed to get away with that. And I was like, well, yeah, he is, right? He will only tell you what he wants to tell you. And as much as we all love Rangers, they don't actually have any responsibility to tell us stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, within the game itself, there are some concerns about sharing. Now, most players are fine with it, but there's a worry that if a player ever turned around and said, you gave away my confidential medical information, right? Well, you wouldn't have a leg to stand on, would you? Legally. Now,
True.
it hasn't happened, but the worry is that it could. And finally, some people just like to keep the opposition guessing as much as the fans. So I think there's always a disconnect between the level of information that we as supporters think we're due out of a football club and the level of information the football club think we are due as supporters. And I think we're at two different places with that. So there's always going to be a slight disconnect. Personally, I think that if it was me, I would say, right, Rangers fans have got a concern because they've had so much injury trouble the last few years. So it's an area that we're quite sensitive in. So let's try and manage the expectation realistically. And if Aasgaard was out for, and the doctor said X amount of weeks, just say it, right? And people at the start will go, oh, for fuck's sake, typical, what are we doing, medical department, all that, right? But then it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now it's a thing, and it's every press conference is asking. I have asked officially and got told no further information apart from what the manager has said. That's the official response. I've kind of gone through, back channels to try and find out, and what I was told was it's not a serious injury, but it was obviously one that was serious enough to be a few weeks' job. So I think that you're probably looking at the earliest being Aloha, and the reason I say that is he's not in the Euro squad. So if he doesn't play at the weekend, he
Then
can't play on Tuesday, right? And I think that I think they would rather just give him the extra time. So I think it's not a million, but the vibes I'm getting are not, because if it's a really bad gene, somebody will tell you.
Yeah.
In a dark way.
Yeah, we've got that scar tissue, but haven't we, over the last
and
few years?
That's what I mean. That's why I think you should just be upfront and say, look, he's at this injury, and say the estimate is however long it is, but it's just an estimate. It could be shorter, it could be a bit longer, right? I think you just you can cover yourself that way. But I do think if you just say, all right, he's getting closer, he's getting closer, he's getting closer. The thing anybody hates is being kept in the dark. What I always compare it to is if you've ever been in a train, see if the train stops and the driver goes, there's a delay up ahead, we're going to be 15 minutes. You go off, but you deal with it. See if you just sit there and they don't tell you anything, you get angrier and angrier and angrier and angrier. So that's why I would do it. But I think that personally, I think please don't go away and say Edgar says he'll be back for the Aloha game. I'm not. I'm just saying the fact that he isn't in the Euro squad tells me that would be the earliest. And then obviously if he doesn't play in that, it would be then the next round of the Europa League. And again, we could tell by the squad. And I do think that if it goes two ways. I think if it had been a serious long-term injury, by now they would have said, right, and just it's bad news, here it is. I think they would have said. So I think it's just maybe one of these niggly injuries that's taken a bit longer than they thought, which does happen sometimes. But yeah, I think you need to be aware of our injury history and that it's left us as supporters a bit more sensitive.
David Edgar confirms Aasgaard back for Aloha. It's going to
100%, 100%. Yeah, David Edgar said. But no, like I say, officially, they are very much say, and they're not even going on the background and saying, look, you can say this, but you come for me. They're not doing that. So far, the only information that anybody has is what Russell Martin said. There's a press conference on Friday. I guarantee you'll be asked about it. And also, one of the things people, a guy said to me, he said, well, can't you pin the manager down? I said, do you mean literally?
A big guy.
I said he's bigger than me, but he meant no, but you could follow it up. And I said, right, okay, I'll tell you how it's gone before when I've done this with managers, not with Russell Martin yet, but I have done this. So Gerrard, yeah, he's got a bit of an niggle. He's not ready for this game. Could you give us a time frame, Stephen? No, I don't want to put a time frame on it right now. Right? He did that. Clement did that. Gio did that. If they don't want to tell you something, they are not, and there's no like a secret code that we use or a special question that he goes, I wasn't going to tell you, but you cracked the code. He's actually out for 3 weeks. Well done. It doesn't work like that. So, I get people get frustrated, but if they don't want to tell you something, they're not going to tell you something, and you might as well let it go because that's the reality. But as I say, there's always going to be this gap between what we think we should know. I mean, do you remember the football report that Patrick Stewart got commissioned?
Yes.
Yeah. A guy said that to me. He said, is this going to be published? I said, no, of course not. And he went, what do you mean, of course not? I said, well, why would you think it would be? It's an internal company report. He said, aye, but people might want to know. I said, do you think when Tesco come up with a sales strategy for the next 5 years, they put it out so that Morrison's and Lidl can read it? He's like, all right. I said, of course they're not going to say, here's all the stuff we're doing, Celtic and Aberdeen and Hearts. Here's all the type of players we want to buy. It's...
Why doesn't Russell Martin just come out and tell us his full tactical breakdown of the game before it happens?
That's exactly it. That's the thing. And you can speak in generalities about it. You can say, look, are you considering moving to a 3 or, this team play with wingers? Would you think about doing stuff like that? And they'll give you a bit of info, but they're not going to sit there and give you the full plan or all the inside stuff. And I remember one time complaining about it to a senior member of Rangers staff, and very good. And I complained about it to a senior member of staff at Rangers one time, and I was like, you're not giving us any info, or the manager's not giving us any information. And he went, good. There you go.
There's one thing I know about Rangers, and it's that they don't want to tell you anything. They never ever do.
If they would rather, but all businesses are like that. We just forget it.
Yep. And Charles, you said this the last time me and David were on. David said it to my face, so I already know what David thinks.
But then he's only reiterating correct information.
Well, this is very true.
You can't give him a row for saying something that's accurate. If he'd lied, then I would join you, but he didn't. That's twice he's come on the show. I actually think Charles is a very truthful man because that's twice he's came on. So he sounds like an honest guy to me.
All I've ever done is be nice to David as well. That's
true. That's true.
And by the way, just very, very quickly, David, what shirt are you wearing?
Oh, it's not a football team one, sorry. It does look like that. I don't know if you can see. It's wrong side. It says wear ear protection. It's Factory Records. Who were a record label in the 80s and 90s, Joy Division, New Order, the Happy Mondays. They had the Hacienda nightclub as well. So it's a music thing. You've
just disappointed everybody there, David.
Well, they think there was a team. No, it's not a football team. It's
is it going to play darts?
It's a bit like that shirt, but no, it is a football style shirt. But it's Factory Records, who record label that I like, and huge Joy Division New Order fan. So
yes, I remember. I watched the film.
You watched the film, yes. So Factory Records, and then Hacienda, the club, and the stripes. That was the Hacienda logo. So that's the reason for it, and that was the label's logo. For some reason, I've got loads of these sort of band label T-shirts. I've got Sub Pop and Rough Trade and stuff. Just for when I used to write for music magazines, they would give you, you'd go to gigs and stuff, and they would give you CDs and albums and T-shirts and stuff. So that's where this came from. I think it was just, I hate to say it, but I went upstairs and I was like, fuck, better put on something clean if I'm going to be on this.
Oh, you don't need to. Look at me.
Well, no, but remember, before I come, I'm usually just in my sitting about clothes, and I've got 5 dogs. So I'd come on and it's all scratches and dog hair and everything. So I thought, but I got lazy and I just grabbed the first thing for the draw, which was this.
Everybody's been thinking that's a football shot. What is it? What is it? So I thought I'd leave it till the very end.
Technically, is a football shirt. I mean, it's got
You could wear it to fives.
You could wear it to fives. It's the same material and everything. But I've actually, believe it or not, I've got you twist my melon, man. Nice, very nice. I've actually got a couple of these because there's a firm that does football shirts or bands if they were football clubs, and I've got like a Ramones one and. Paul Weller did a couple of crackers that Admiral brought out, one for the Jam and one for the Style Council, that are absolutely brilliant tops. And it's got, like Admiral, and then it's got the Jam logo there, and it's got the lyrics of some of the songs on the inside collar. So I think it's becoming.
You'll be worth a few quid now, by the way. You'll be worth a few quid.
The Weller ones, do you think?
I think the Jam ones will.
Okay, gonna go and look them up.
I don't even want to know what you've got in your house. Anyway, that will do us because I cannot afford to pay David overtime. So we shall. And by the way, I should clarify that I pay David in self-esteem.
Yes, that's he pays me in love.
Yes, well,
vibes.
David,
vibes.
Yes, I don't want more Twitter rumours.
No, you said me.
Twitter rumours.
I think we've had enough of podcasters getting up to that sort of thing to last us a lifetime. So yeah, no, we'll just remain good friends.
Yes, I think that's it. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, David. Thank you, everybody who has tuned in. Remember to check out Heart and Hand, not just on YouTube, but of course on Patreon. And I don't know if you've decided who's the best looking and who's the biggest Rangers podcast. I'll leave you to put that into the comments after the video, or you can tweet David on the old tweety Twitter that your answers. I hope you don't get too many. That doesn't even make sense, that comment. You don't even. Well, actually, I know I don't pay for my internet. My missus pays for it because she makes a lot more money than me. So yes, David, thank you very much. Everybody tuning in, thank you very much. And me and David will see you hopefully in a fortnight's time.